Hello!
Hello!
And welcome back to the workshop.
In this week's episode, we're going to continue doing the finishing off the pipe work we couldn't do last week because of the lack of P-clips.
Yes, we now have P-clips and now we shall retain the P-clips and retain the hoses, and then
we can move on to onto different pastures.
Yes. We're going to be welding in a front bulkhead. My name is Oliver Pickard, and I've always dreamed of building my own car, together with my aerospace engineer and rallyist dad, Andrew.
Hello.
I found the perfect project.
This is my Cox GTM.
The remains of one of only 800 made.
And that looks bad, but when you look at it from the inside, it's even worse.
Crashed, fire damaged, rusted, unrestorable. We aren't just modifying, but completely re-engineering. We aren't just bolting on parts, we are making the tools that fabricate the parts to build my dream car. Bespoke, one of one. This is Project Mosquito. The centre tunnel removable part now reminds me of a bread bin, like a loaf tin.
Yeah, the old-fashioned enamel, metal enamel pots.
Yeah, that you use to keep your bread nice in your kitchen. I like it though, it's cool. All the finishing off work last week that we did to the Sentinel really made a difference. I don't know whether it comes across in camera, but it just feels more complete now. It feels more proper.
Yeah, it's a lot neater and tidier and more finished off.
Proper. So first thing that we need to do is take all of the hoses off to the bottom one. Because that bottom clip from last week needs drilling and tapping.
Drilling and tapping and moving across,
So I'll take all of these off. We noticed last week that it can't sit up. I noticed it when I was editing.
Yeah, it can't sit right up against this face.
So you get a little gap.
Because of the little tiny tack weld. So what we'll do is we'll put a chamfer on this corner.
Yep.
Rather than grind the weld away.
Yeah.
We'll put a chamfer on the corner, move it up, and then we can drill it, put a nut and bolt through, and bolt it into position using stainless nuts and bolts. So we got such a good response from answering the comments. It's kind of live at the end of the video. We're going to do it again.
Yeah, people really seem to like it. There was a ton of comments in the comment section of last week's video that I wouldn't have thought to address. It's the funny thing of we are like nerdy in a really particular way. So in the past we've tried to preempt people's comments and answer kind of questions that we thought people might have about the car, but it turns out that everyone's questions are very different than we thought. So it's actually really nice for us and helps us to make more informative videos and answer the questions that people really have, because I know that a lot of people have no kind of context for what this car is. I've never driven anything like it.
No, I haven't.
So what we're going to do, we'll handpick a few and we'll answer them at the end of each video. So if you've got any comments and questions, like my dad said, make sure you leave them down below. And if you left a comment last week, then you might just get it answered this week.
Superb. I think we should remake this as well in stainless.
What's that?
This little bracket.
Is it not stainless?
No. So the little bracket that holds the top heater pipes apart is this little tiny piece of stainless steel. We don't normally like brackets because a bracket's a bit of a
I have a thing against brackets, especially brackets to brackets.
Yeah. So basically we've got one tiny little bracket. We've made it as lightweight as possible. So we've radiused the corners off here and there. So basically it weighs next to nothing. We're going to keep it that way. And everything else that needs a bracket, if it's not physically welded to the chassis and painted, it'll be stainless steel. So if it's a bracket you can take off with a nut and bolt, it'll be stainless or aluminium.
Yeah. These are offcuts from when we made the little box section structure that lives underneath the tunnel. That little box section structure is super important, by the way. It will support the skid pan that will run the length of the underneath of the car, so that if the car ever does ground out on a high bit of road under massive compression for whatever reason, it will be like protected and the actual chassis won't wear. So that's really, really important. It's a major part of the chassis. And once it's all welded in, it will be like a backbone chassis in a car, like Lotus Europa or Alpine A110 or 310, or what have you. Anyway, these are offcuts from when we did that. And what we're going to use them for is little tiny brackets for mounting our hose clips for the radiator tubes, because they're thick enough to hold a thread. So we actually just be able to tap them, drill them, tap them, and we're able to weld them on and then have our little hose clamps run to them. And they weigh very little. And they're otherwise waste, and we'd already made them.
So these are our P-clips, and they're called P-clips for obvious reasons. We couldn't get any 35mm ones. So what we're going to do is use the rubber from this one, and actually these are 25mm, and we're going to make new ones of these. Out of stainless steel, just the same, only so it'll fit a 35mm tube. There we go, our very own custom 35mm stainless steel B brackets. What we'll do, we'll tack everything in place now. When we take the engine out, we can turn the car over and we can all weld it properly then.
That's neat.
Right.
One major downside we've found to this orange insulation stuff is that it's super grippy, so it picks up dust like crazy. If you ever had one of them sticky hand toys when you were a kid that you throw at stuff,
Oh, like or even a boggling.
or a boggling. Hey, that's a reference. Yeah, if you've ever had a boggling, the way that they pick up muck and everything just sticks to them, and they get super gross, and you've got to wipe them down with baby wipes because it's like something with a bit of oil in it slightly oily soap. These are just like that.
Oh, that's superb. That's really got a grip there. That's even without the
Even without a strap on it.
strap on here. Clean the paint off this, and we can tack that one in place.
Part of why we're threading these, by the way, even though we've decided to use a nut and a washer on the other ones, is simply because we're not a big fan of captives, are we?
No.
If you ever damage that thread, a welded in captive is an absolute nightmare to get out and sort out and fix. Anyone who's ever stripped a captive bolt or a captive nut will know this. Whereas if you thread it, you can put a dash of Loctite on it, put the bolt in or the screw in from the other side, and then you've basically got a captive, but if you ever need to replace it or remove it, then you can do.
Yep. Or even if you need to go a size up.
Yeah.
You know, these are 5mm bolts. If you need to put a 6mm bolt in, you can do.
Yeah. And the other thing is that with stainless has a horrible habit of galling. Every 1 in 100 bolts, you'll get about halfway down the bolt, and all of a sudden your nut will stick and then never come undone again and never tighten up again. And the only good way to get it off is to cut it and then replace it with a new screw. It happens. Out of habit, because I used to work on boats and used to use stainless every single day, out of habit, when I get nuts for something, if I need 2 nuts, I pick a 3rd one up and put it in my pocket, just in case. If I need 2 bolts, I always take 3, for the simple reason that you never know. So these are really good to be able to be replaceable.
That's got it.
Our hoses are now fully retained.
Yep, we've still got to finish weld the little tabs, but that's not a big issue.
Now we'll do those when we take the engine out and do the back of the welding on the firewall.
Yep.
But it's I'm really happy with it. It's come out well. So our next job, front bulkhead.
Yep. Can't wait.
It's only taken us 69 episodes to get around to it. Here's the part I've been waiting for literally years. It's time to weld the bulkhead in. Now we've put the sills on and we've put the front bulkhead on, but not on, because it's a little bit harder than it may seem. You see, this car is designed so that all the parts are as light as possible. All the sheet metal is very light, but that means that a lot of it is distorted and not strong until it's all welded in together. Once it's all, you know, think about a box on its all, like the parts of a box aren't very strong, a cardboard box, but then when you put a cardboard box together as a cardboard box, it can be strong enough to stand on. Whereas, you know, sheets on their own aren't that stiff. So if you think about it like that, we've got to assemble our cardboard box.
What we're going to do first is do the weld prep. We're going to remove the steelet from the offending area, so we can get a few spot welds in. We can get everything lined up properly as it needs to be, because as Oliver's already said, it's only 0.5 millimetre steel. So once we've done that, we can get it in, we can set a datum, and then from that datum we can work everything else from it, making it all nice and straight and all super neat.
Moves me in then.
$290. And there to this, 260. $260, 260,5, half a mil. We can manage half a mil.
It's a funny thing, this, because this is the point where this car actually becomes stiff. Like, the chassis as it is super stiff, but it's not a triangulated space frame, is it?
No.
Compare it to something like a Porsche 917 or something like that. Like, it's not a space frame. This is where it gets its monocoque elements.
Yeah.
It becomes a box. You know, we talked about a cardboard box before. Well, when all of these panels all come together, it will be a box. And so we're using tubes to triangulate sheet metal, and using sheet metal to triangulate a bunch of tubes.
Yeah.
And so all together, it becomes ridiculous.
Yeah. It's basically, you take a monocoque car and you basically put tubes into every single suspension pickup point that you've got. So it does make it incredibly strong.
It's NASCAR engineering.
Yeah.
A bunch of cars have done it. I've talked about this in previous videos, but Peugeot T16 did it in Group B, but it was really first invented in NASCAR. They did it the other way around. They got a production car, and then they put a roll cage in it that just happened to be a space frame chassis, and that's how they got around it. And then they dipped the entire car in acid and thinned out the sheet metal as much as possible until what you basically had was a paper bag with a space frame in it. But then some clever person went, well, we can make a lot less space frame. When they started getting wise, the powers that be, some clever person went, well, if we use the standard body to reinforce our space frame, we can make less space frame and still call it a roll cage. And that's what we're basically doing, but we're not starting with a car. Someone in the comments usually calls it a space cock, because it's not a space frame and it's not a monocoque, but it's a little bit of both. Because the problem with a space frame is you need loads of room. And the problem with a monocoque is that it's all boxes, where you don't have any room for boxes and you don't have any room for...
Yeah, so this is our best compromise.
Yeah.
Super strong, as much room inside as possible, and absolutely brilliant.
In fact, that is the greatest misnomer in history. The zero compromise sports car is a complete and utter lie. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a zero compromise car. A car is a long list of compromises that get you where you want to go. So a perfect example of that is the Porsche 911, right? Which is, without a doubt, one of, if not the greatest sports car in history. For what the 911's achieved over the years, we can hand it that badge, right? But the 911 is like this really wide thing, because you've got everything from a Carrera 2 to a GT3 RS, which is like super lightweight downforce monster, and then you've got like GT2 racing cars, then you've got Carrera Cup cars, and then you've got something like the Targa, which is a Grand Tourer, and then you've got the 911 Turbo, GTS, whatever. And underneath, they're all a 911. They're all a stock standard, like 911 floor pan, that then goes on to be other things. But every single decision along the way makes it a different car. When you make your own car from scratch, every decision you make will change that car and turn it into something else. Everything is a compromise.
Yeah, like we said, like a racing car makes a terrible road car.
Oh yeah, racing cars.
They're noisy, they're uncomfortable. Over, more than a couple of hours, you got driver fatigue, and when it rains, the thing's set up too hard, so it just slides everywhere.
Yeah. But the thing is that, like I said, there's no such thing as a zero compromise car. It doesn't exist. Even racing cars are compromised because they have to compromise from different tracks, because one track may like one sort, another track, Formula One cars are the perfect example of that. The Williams Formula One suspension that was hydraulic, that could raise and lower the car, meant that there needed to be no compromise in your aerodynamics, because your floor height, your height between the ground and the floor, was always the same. It was always right. Whereas cars, the front end dips under braking, and then it lifts under acceleration and rolls in corners, even an F1 car. So your aerodynamics has to be compromised, even on an F1 car, the least compromised cars on the planet, because the state of the car changes throughout the track, and the rules say you can't have hydraulic suspension.
Like I said before, anything that needs to happen, you get a downpour.
Yeah.
And your perfect setup in the dry becomes a nightmare in the wet.
Yeah. And it's why I love road cars, because road cars are really hard. It's far easy to anyone can make a racing car. It's really hard to make a racing car that wins. That's the art of a racing car. But any dumbass can make a racing car. But road cars are incredibly difficult, and road racing cars were an art in themselves. But we'll talk about that at the end, because somebody asked to comment last week, and I want to answer that in detail. So,
right, next panel in.
Well, do you want to do some more tacking?
No, not yet. Because I'd like to fit these pieces.
Yeah.
And then check everything again.
Yeah.
And as we're going along, so we don't lose our data point, which we've set now, our bulkhead tubes from here to the back, and the distance between here and the top of the tube. Yep. Is all set now. So we need to get everything else squared up, because we're working in 3 dimensions. It's not just the distance from here to here. It's what the angles backwards and forwards. It's a different distance between this plane and that plane, this top and that top.
I think they get it, Dad. It's really difficult.
It's hard work. That's it. Happy days. Let's get a couple of tacks on that.
You gonna tack there? Because that was pretty spot on, that.
Oh.
Yeah, please don't melt my thumb.
Okay, move your hand then. Move your hand.
That's alright.
Alright. That's it.
Because of how much work you still yet to do with the sills, for various reasons that I won't go into, we still want them to be removable for now. So we can't weld this bit in here.
And we can't weld this piece here or along or any of this because we need to be able to get this off and out.
Yeah. Bead rolling also doesn't help matters.
No.
Makes panels stiffer, but it warps the heck out of them. It looks wonky, but it's not. I don't know whether it's because the car's not quite level, because the floor's not level, or because of the light, or the radius of this bend, which is tighter on the edges than it is in the middle. But it's straight. It just looks wonky. It's driving me insane. It's like one of them weird false flat roads when you're going uphill, but you feel like you're on a flat.
Yeah. In case you're wondering why we made these panels this shape and we didn't just make a flat panel to go between the two like the bottom one, is because if you look inside, as you can see, if you look inside it just gives you that little bit more room because obviously your feet are going to be hit here, right? And where your knees are, it's just this little bit more extra room. It just gives a little bit more volume in the cabin.
And helps you get your feet underneath the steering wheel when you get in.
What's the Japanese thing in architecture where they give space, room for space?
Space for space.
Yeah.
M. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but it always drives me nuts on videos where when people talk about the Mark 1 Skyline and they call it the Hakasuka when it's the Hakuska. Hakasuka. I do not speak Japanese. I do not claim to speak Japanese. If you want pronunciations, ask Alexi. Not me. I'm the wrong person on YouTube.
Takes us all our time to speak English.
Yeah. Well, I speak 3 languages, all of them terribly.
So here, what we need to do with what we're doing here.
What we're doing where?
Here.
Battery tray on one side and I think washer bottle on the other.
So we're going to fill it in.
No. Sorry, you can't be privy to this conversation. Bye-bye. So, yeah, it's here, isn't it?
Yep.
Because you don't want it to look like a Pegaso. You know what I mean? Yeah?
And
I don't mind going from top to bottom. So you might have noticed us drawing squiggly lines on the sill. The reason for this is we now take a huge step in the history of this car, as big as doing the wheel wells, because everybody's been asking me about the wheel arches forever, right? And this is the first step in kind of wheel archness. So when I first designed this chassis, I designed it so it could either be bonnet exit or wing exit. And the reason for that is we weren't sure which way we were going to go, but it's to match the angle of the windscreen with the angle of the bonnet exit duct for the radiator. It would have looked terrible, so we didn't do that.
Yeah, and there would have been no room for a spare wheel, even a safety spare. It would have eaten that area up completely.
Yes, but it would have also have looked garbage, because a lot of people's bonnet exits for their radiators are way too steep. And the whole point of having a bonnet exit duct is that your hot air leaving your radiator joins the laminar flow, which is the tiny bit of non-moving static air that your car is covered in. As it's moving down the road, the car is moving through the air, but the air touching the car isn't actually moving. Some people's minds just got blown, but it's true, right? That's called your laminar flow. And the idea is that you shove a lot of hot, not very dense air into your laminar flow, which increases the thickness of your laminar flow for your windscreen. And so the air that's coming along kind of jumps your windscreen, and it decreases your effective windscreen angle according to the wind. We decided not to do that because our windscreen is very small and leant back as it is, and so that's fine. And it gives us better opportunities to do other things in the front end, which I'll get to later on. I'm excited, can you tell? Right, so we can now exit through here. Previously, we designed, we've always going to have an exit here anyway, for the wheel well air pressure. But previously we designed the sills so we could fit a battery here and a screen wash bottle in the other side, because it's a super low down convenient area that's within the wheelbase, so it's a really good place to store something small and heavy. Now, since then, obviously we've been building this car quite a while, and there are some really nice lightweight lithium batteries that have come onto the market, meaning that the battery cable to take current from here all the way to the alternator and starter motor over there and back, the battery cable itself weighs more than the battery would. So by having the battery further back in the car, we actually increase and improve weight. We lose weight by not having the battery on the other side of the car. So we're not doing that anymore. So we can now get rid of this area and go for full Can-Am wheel arch badassness. Look, we've been making Can-Am references this entire time. Formula and Can-Am cars all had 4-sport wheels. We're doing it for a reason.
This looks like a Formula chassis.
It does, or like a McLaren Can-Am wheel arch, or that new Lotus 66 thing that Lotus have just come out with, where they didn't make a Can-Am car in period, and apparently Colin Chapman drew one. Colin Chapman drew one in all of his spare time, and then decided not to, and so now they're making it anyway. So we can now get rid of all of the air that's in here out. And so we can now chop our sills shorter, save a load of weight, and have better airflow.
Yep. We're actually losing probably about 25% of the weight from the sills.
Yes. And there's a cool thing that happens in a perfect world. In fact, Bizzarini figured this out first. If you look at a Bizzarini Strada, the reason why a Bizzarini Strada looks a bit pap is because it's slab-sided. And slab-sided racing cars are best racing car because the air just goes straight down the side of your car. And if you look at like F40s, if you look at a lot of the Formula 1 cars that have the skirts and all that, they're all slab-sided. Slab-sided car is best car.
Yeah, low drag.
Right? Minimal drag, yeah. Now, we aren't doing that. We're going to have a nice curvy hourglass shape. That's an issue, but not an issue thanks to this.
Because what happens is, as the hot air escapes from here, right, you get a lot of volume of really nice warm air. It makes an air curtain.
And it joins the laminar flow down the side of the body.
So it comes out here, joins the laminar flow down, and it actually, where the back wheel arch, where the air meets the back wheel arch, it's an air curtain. So basically, it moves it deletes the wheel arch itself, if you will. It sort of makes it into a slab-sided car.
So in the same way as your bonnet exit air duct usually gets rid of your windscreen, we're using it to get rid of our rear wheel arches, because our rear wheel arches would have caused more drag than our windscreen does, because they are a greater effective area.
So a bit in effect makes the car slab-sided, even though it'll be nicely rounded and beautifully curved.
In fact, when they got rid of the slab sides in Formula 1, this became a huge problem for Formula 1 cars. The reason why the Tyrrell, like 6-wheel Formula 1 car has 6 wheels is because wheels suck aerodynamically. So they made the front wheels smaller and had 4 of them, which didn't really work. But a cooler car is Gordon Murray's Alan Prost, I can't remember, was that Honda powered? I can't remember. I think so. Where it has the radiators kind of mounted in the middle of the car, and it takes air in the front and then ducts the air straight into the back tyres, deleting the back tyres with the wake of the radiators. So yes, Gordon Murray has yet again done this before us. And so what we need to do is actually duct our air up and then across the body of the car. And that gets rid of that wake, and then you might now have some ideas as to what our wheel arch shape will look like, at least in this bit. Right, let's chop some sills. This is a commitment now. There is no going back.
Well, it's because we spent hours and hours making these.
And that might be the name for this episode. And then we can finesse it after.
Yeah, what we'll do, we'll leave this longer. We'll leave that a little bit longer. And then we can, if whatever we need to do then, if we need to put a radius on or whatever, we've got enough.
And before anybody asks, yes, these wheel arches will be legal because they have to be. But actually, it's well within. There's no impedance on it at all from what we've looked at and what we've
studied the rules and regulations, and we are well within our.
Yeah, but our design just happens to be within. It's fine. With the dimensions that the car has, it looking right and working, we're well within regulation, so we're all right there. Because I know someone's going to ask. That's a horrible feeling.
So yeah, 25-30% weight loss.
And taking something that we spent hours making and chopping a big slice off it. I know it's the right thing to do, but I made it sound like Pillsbury Doughboy then. And it looks awesome.
So yeah, big changes afoot.
Yeah, big changes that I always wanted to do, but were scared to do.
Well, the thing is, we're building this. For us, this is a once in a lifetime thing.
And so we should do everything that we want to do. We should nail it, and we should have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
It's like having the courage to hang a massive chandelier in your living room. Everybody wants to do it, but most people just go for a tiny IKEA light fitting because they're scared of sticking out. And here's the thing: last week, the previous episode, at the end of a video, I made a joke about YouTubers being unique and YouTubers going for it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to go for it, go for it. Don't hold back. So that's what we're doing. I'm taking my own advice. No, you've got to, haven't you?
Yeah, well, there's no going back now. We've chopped it.
That's it.
There it is. We've literally got more of nothing.
Yeah. The car just got lighter. And yes, this means that if you are behind the car, from certain angles, you'll still see the suspension, and all of this will be visible from the outside of the car. Yeah, it feels just as horrible as the first one.
Yeah, so there they were gone.
We're supposed to be welding on a front bulkhead. I think we may have got slightly distracted.
Yeah, but all these different changes and everything all affects everything else. So we couldn't do the sills until we got the bulkhead in place. You know, it's a catch-22 type situation.
I had to commit. And at the end of this project, I may have to be committed. Whew.
We'll put the front back on again now.
Bit of wood up front.
It's not.
Very flipping.
Yeah, because it's thicker at bottom than it is at top, so yeah. So we've done as much as we can now on the front bulkhead without doing the sills. Now we've chopped the sills and our plans have changed slightly. Now we can move on to doing other things.
Yeah, it's a massive job, is doing the sills, and we can't do more bulkhead without doing the sills, so that'll be next week.
Yeah.
Because it's a big job, it's a big change, and there's a lot, it's very intensive work, and there's a lot of measuring and faffing about. It's not something we want to rush.
Yeah, but it will make a massive impact out in the way that the car looks. It'll actually go from being a kind of space frame monocoque into being a bodied car.
Yeah.
Which I can't wait for.
So for now, I think we should finish for this week and do question time. Okay, so the first question wasn't on the last video, but it did come last week, and it's quite a good one. It's a thinker. Denyo3992 says, here's a question for you both of you, for the both of you. From all the examples on the road, it's clear that any suspension can work. It's a question of what works better in any certain application given the available funds. Rally cars are all built around McPherson struts. Were it not required, what suspension would you choose to run rally? Would it be different front to rear? Would it vary based on front engine versus rear engine, two-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive?
That's a big question.
It is.
Right, so in fact, very, very involved, because there's lots of different things, lots of different parameters within that, hence being front engine, rear engine, mid engine.
What tyres are available?
What tyres are available, what surface you're running on, whether it be like a forest gravel stage or whether it's tarmac spec.
Yeah.
I think as a good all-round double wishbones all the way around would be, for me, the ultimate spec.
Yes, I'd go double wishbones as well, but I would choose a very specific geometry. My suspension would be different front to rear. For rally purposes, very different to this car. Tarmac rally, not so much, but I'd want really long rear wishbones that run a long way back, and I'd want to make it so that when the car hits a bump, it has a rearward axle path. And the axle path actually gets longer under compression, so the car becomes more stable.
Yeah, so high speed on rough circuits, even like Paris-Dakar cars.
Yeah.
Prime example. You know, they actually, as the suspension compresses, the wheelbase gets longer.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want any sort of trailing arm design, because the problem with the trailing arm design is that you can't really have any camber adjustment. When you add camber, you get your track width shortens, so the width between your rear wheels actually gets narrower. This causes, and same with McPherson strut actually, because of the angle of the strut is the angle that your wheel moves at, and a McPherson strut loses camber under bump, which is not what you want.
And then gets it back on full compression.
Yeah. And so your wheels are moving closer together and further apart, but also they're gaining and losing camber all the time, which for a mid-engine car you definitely don't want. And I know Daniel, he's after building a mid-engine car, so for a mid-engine car that would be super bad.
No trailing arms.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of trailing arms at all. And with a trailing arm as well, you've got to set the pivot quite high, otherwise your axle path gets all messed up and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, and then you've problems with like anti-squat.
Yeah. So the back end of your car drops to the floor when your car sets off, and then you have to run super stiff springs. It's just a mess. So yeah, definitely McPherson strut.
No, definitely not.
Not McPherson strut. Double wishbones all round.
Yep.
But there would be a very specific thing, and also if I could get away with it, I'd love to run for a rally car. Torsion bars rather than springs, so you can have your spring mounted in your bottom wishbone, which brings all your weight inboard.
Yep. So you have less unsprung weight,
and lies your springs in your floor. So your shock absorbers are just a shock absorber with no spring, and that way it removes a load of unsprung mass. I mean, our shock absorbers weigh next to nothing. They're aluminium and they're brilliant. The spring is the thing that's heavy. And so if you could mount your spring in your floor, I know Formula One cars are a torsion spring. But yeah, it brings your weight more inboard. It gets rid of a load of unsprung weight, and that would massively increase your small bump sensitivity, which is what you want for a rally car. The lighter that mass is on the end of your suspension, your unsprung mass, the more responsive that rally car will be.
Yeah.
The softer
and the better it turns in, the quicker it reacts.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing is, if the difference between a tarmac car and a gravel car, obviously you've got gravel tyres which are a lot heavier to start with. So the less weight, the less unsprung weight you have, the better it is.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about using CAD for some parts, or even buying a 3D printer?
No. The reason is that what we actually wanted to do with this car is build a car how they used to do it in the olden days. I'll say olden days, pre-computers.
When I was but a boy.
When I was a mere lad, right? And basically, that puts it into the parameters are that anybody can do it. You don't have to have 100,000 quid worth of kit before you even start.
Yeah.
You can do it with a rickety old lathe, a MIG and TIG welder, homemade pipe bender, and you can create what we've done so far.
Right, CAD's really cool, and I like 3D printing. I think a lot of people who buy 3D printers don't actually have a use for 3D printers, so they end up justifying that use by making rubbish. But having said that, 3D printing, especially metal 3D printing, especially for things like exhausts,
yeah,
and
like
stuff
if you're
like that.
making an Inconol exhaust,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, but that is 100,000, 200,000 quid worth of kit.
Yeah, that's super cool. But my biggest problem with CAD is that everybody who makes stuff in CAD, unless you get to really high-end stuff, everything that's made in CAD looks like it was made in CAD. And it's rubbish. It's awful looking. Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
Everything that like everything that you make on a CNC machine looks like it was made on a CNC machine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's very divorced from what we want to achieve with this car. We want to achieve something that is made in an old school manner, that's inspired by old school. Sorry. We want to make stuff that's made in an old school manner, that's inspired by old school. We want to make stuff that's made in an old school manner, that's inspired by old school stuff, and that works in a modern way.
Yeah. But also, we want to keep it within the realms of people actually being able to doing it. And to show that you can actually, even now in these days, you can actually produce something that is beautiful, functions perfectly, looks stunning,
But uses old school skill.
but just uses skill.
Yeah. The thing is, there is no denying that if you have all the tools in the world, you can make something incredible. Like, duh. You know what I mean? Like Formula 1 teams, they've got all the kit and therefore they can make something incredible. Like race teams, they've got all the kit and they can make something incredible. But the fact is, can you make something incredible? And often we use, can I make something incredible? Can anybody, you know? We use excuses for stuff. Oh, I can't do that, I can't afford.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't, you know, it's like people giving up smoking. Like they always go, oh, I'll give up smoking at the end of this time because I'm in a bit of a stressful period.
Yeah.
People, you've got to think about gunners,
Yeah.
right?
I used to work with a lot of
Go on.
people that, right, they're gunners. We call them gunners because you talk to them and they say, oh, this summer I'm gonna do this. And summer comes along, you see them again in autumn time, and did you enjoy what you were going to do? Oh, well, I never got around to it. I was going to do it, but this happened, and I never did it.
Yeah.
And the same thing, well, when I retire, I'm going to buy a motorhome, I'm going to travel around Europe. And then you meet them years later, did you enjoy your trip around Europe? Well, I was going to do it, but this happened, and I never did it, right? Don't like gunners. You either do it or don't, right? If you want to move to a house in France and build an off-grid place,
Do it.
Don't talk about it. Just get on with it.
Yeah. Life's too short for excuses.
Yeah.
Like how many people's lives are like when you get to the end of your life, are you going to look back and went, oh, I had some good excuses? You know what I mean? Or are you actually going to done it? Like do the thing. Don't talk about doing the thing.
Get on with it.
Yeah. And that comment was from Ollie Woolley, by the way. Okay, dank rafted. I think that's how you say it, right? There was a bunch of people that said this. I'm sorry, there was like 4 or 5 people that had this same question. But he's the first one I've got to. Interested to hear that you are not putting in a limited slit diff. He had an Escort and each one of the best things that he did. And he wonders why and if there are negatives with our independent rear suspension and stuff. Right,
I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Escorts, 3 of them being RSs, right? All the RSs had diffs and my 1600 Escort had a diff. The other 2 didn't, but by the by, right? An Escort needs a diff.
Yes.
Because there's the old Scandinavian flick where if you want to go left, you flick it right, and then throw it in, turn it left, get on the power, the diff locks up and it helps the car turn. And it's all about helping the car turn. right? With this car, if you put a limited slip diff in it, right, and the diff locks up mid-turn, all the car's going to want to do is spin. Right? So we need, and the car's got a slip angle built into it. So basically, this car will turn in beautifully, right? And it will change direction beautifully.
Okay, a Lotus Elise doesn't have a limited slip differential. A Lotus Exige doesn't have a limited slip differential. A McLaren 720 doesn't have a limited slip differential. A McLaren MC12 doesn't have a limited slip differential. A McLaren P1 with 900 horsepower does not have a limited slip differential. The Delta Wing racing car, remember that thing with that skinny front end, super fat back end, right? That did not have a limited slip differential. Okay, the P1 and the Senna have like cool brake vectoring stuff, but that's because they've got a squillion. I think Delta Wing had 500 horsepower, P1 900 horsepower. This does not have that much power. Right, I'm going to do a demonstration of polar moment of inertia for you. Right, so if you,
you're going to need my chair.
I'm going to need your chair.
View, yeah.
Right. So, turn the camera. Right. Okay, so I'm now sat on a pivot. Right, and I have two weights in my hand. We'll call these fuel tank and engine. Doesn't matter which way around they are. They can be engine and they can be fuel tank. First things first. There is no such thing as centrifugal force. I know, it's true, right? It is called conservation of momentum. So basically, a mass traveling in a line wants to keep moving in that straight line unless another force is applied to it, right? So when you are driving in your car and you go around a corner and your body goes, right, towards the outside of the turn, you're not feeling centrifugal force. What you're feeling is your body, being a mass in that car, wanting to travel in a straight line. And the reason that we know this is because if you get a ball and you rotate it on a wheel, instead of it going out on a curve and feeling a centrifugal force, an outwards pulling force that's rotating, it actually flies off in a straight line, right? Like a trebuchet, like a trebuchet catapult. This is called conservation of momentum. It's one of Newton's laws, and there's a reason why the Newton's laws are not Newton's strong opinions, right? Because they are laws. If you're on this planet, you abide by Newton's laws, you don't really get much of a choice. And cars are exactly the same. Now, in your car, you've got your centre of mass. Doesn't matter about your weight balance. You can have 50-50 weight distribution, but your centre of mass is different. So you can have a front mid-engine car, like an old Corvette, right, that has 50-50 weight distribution, but your centre of mass is still in the front. In a mid-engine car, obviously, even if you've got perfect weight balance, which you shouldn't really have in a mid-engine car for this reason, but your centre of mass is still in your centre of mass, right? Your centre of rotation is a different thing from your centre of mass. And then if you wanted to get really complicated, you've also got a centre of pressure. And in a perfect world, you'd actually have them all in a line. You'd have your centre of rotation, then you'd have your centre of mass behind that, and then your centre of pressure behind that, because very bad things happen when your centre of pressure is in front of your centre of mass. So, right, I'm going to now demonstrate something called polar moment of inertia. So, when you go into a corner, right, you have to slow down because you're in any car, obviously, you tap your brakes, right? But if you're in a front engine car, that engine block wants to carry on going straight, yeah? Conservation of momentum. Your car wants to carry on going straight, but your engine block wants to go straight as well. So when you turn in, that engine block, all it wants to do is go where it was going. And so you need very big front tyres to rotate that mass. And then you want to rotate the back end as well. So then you want the whole car to rotate because the entire mass of the vehicle feels the inertia at the same time. The car is going straight, and then you want to introduce a different force to turn it. Now that force is through your suspension and your tyres. But you also have a different force with your foot. you can use a bit of throttle and rotate the car under throttle using a limited slip differential. But the thing is that when a car goes around a corner, all four wheels want to travel at a different speed, right? Because if you get a car, like a model car, and you trace it around, this is really easy to see when a car drives around a corner in the snow. You actually get four separate tracks that are different lengths and different radiuses. So basically, when a car goes around a corner, every single wheel travels a different distance and a different speed. Now the problem with using a limited slip differential is that you are attaching two wheels together, so they functionally want to travel the same speed as each other and the same distance, so the car will slide. It's great for getting a car to rotate, but that's about it. And it's inefficient because you are actually causing scrub to happen. Now, in a mid-engine car, the polar moment of inertia is in the middle. So your centre of mass is in the middle, so it can actually rotate the front end around without it affecting the mass, the centre of mass in the middle. The car can rotate around the centre of mass. That's why when you spin out in a mid-engine car, it spins like a spinning top, right? Or a Beyblade or whatever, right? It spins just like a spinning top. It spins from that polar moment of inertia. If you watch cars slide out, you'll always notice that they spin around the engine block 99% of the time. So if the engine's in the front, the front end basically stays where it is and the back end rotates around it. If it's mid-engined, it rotates around that. If it's a 911, right, it understeers, then oversteers massively, and then the front end rotates around the back.
Yeah, it usually goes off backwards.
And it usually then ends up, traveling backwards in a straight line, following that conservation of momentum, right? So, in a perfect world, want to enter a corner, braking as little as possible, carrying as much speed as possible, and we want all four wheels to travel in four different distances at four different speeds. So we don't need a limited slip differential to rotate that car, because that car is able to travel those four different distances at four different speeds. Now, before Dad mentioned slip angles. In a car, you have the angle which your tyre points, and then you have the angle which your tyre actually goes, because conservation of momentum is pulling it that way. Because your tyre has some deformation in it as well, but there's also the mass trying to pull it off course. You have each tyre has its own slip angle, but also the chassis itself has a slip angle, and all four wheels together with the chassis have the slip angle of the vehicle. Now, you'll notice when you look at cars, in fact, it was the biggest defining moment in the new Corvette being mid-engine, was the fact that the old Corvette, being front-engined, actually required bigger front tyres to move that mass around the corner. The newer Corvette was able to have much smaller front tyres and still lap a track faster, which meant no tramlining on actual roads. Because when you're on a road that has a crown in the middle, if you've got big wide front tyres, it tends to hunt and try to find the ditch and wants to follow the ditches. It's terrible, right? So, polar moment of inertia. Engine, fuel tank, right? If I rotate in with these two in like this, I'll spin really quickly. And then if I pull them out from each other, I will slow right down. And if I pull them in again, right, I should speed up. So out, slow down, and in, and I speed up again, right? The reason for this, again, is conservation of momentum. These two drills want to go straight. If I let go of them, they just go whee, right? But when they are towards the center of my mass, right? When the center of mass is in the center of rotation, it wants to rotate. Now, this means that we can carry much more speed. We can rotate a car into the corner without losing speed because we're not scrubbing. We can turn in a lot better, and we can carry more speed through the corner, which means on the corner exit, we're traveling a lot faster. So we don't need to brake as much. We can carry more speed through the corner. And then on the corner exit, we're going a lot faster. Now then, in a downshift, so downshifting into a corner, right? If you were at redline in this car, you would land at approximately 5,000 RPM. I looked it up on some dyno sheets, and I found one for a 245 horsepower K series, so it's a very similar engine to what we have. And they landed at 5,000 RPM, I think at 150 horsepower. So it's, even though this engine might be 250 plus horsepower, at 5,000 RPM it's not, because your power curve in a normal aspirated engine does this. If it was turbo, it would have a big lump, and that would cause problems in this whole thing. But because we have linear power, at about 5,000 RPM, we don't have 250 horsepower, we have approximately 150 or thereabouts, which can easily be put through a fast rolling tyre. If that tyre was much slower rolling, because you've had to slow down for the corner, then get round the corner, then get back up to speed again, then 150 horsepower through a 195 tyre would be problematic. But because we are moving quickly, adding inertia to a tyre that already is spinning quickly is quite easy. So we don't need any like traction control system, we don't need a limited slip diff to recover that speed. The only time it would actually hurt us is setting off from a stop in the wet. And of course, in the rain, you're not going to be really going that fast anyway, because you're in the rain. And whether you've got a limited slip diff or not, because you're not trying to rotate the car, like a limited slip diff, there's many different sorts. There's in fact, even before I brought up some examples of cars that were open diff, old Grand Prix cars, Jim Clark's old Grand Prix car had an open diff. It was only later when Hewland brought in the Cam and Powell diff and cars went to slicks and had downforce that they actually needed a limited slip diff. Because if you have a slip angle, all four wheels and all four tyres can actually travel at different speeds, and the car can actually travel at an angle and not be drifting. It is taking its natural trajectory through the corner, losing as little speed as possible, and that is exactly what we've designed into this car. So that's why we don't need a limited slip diff. Did that make sense?
Yeah, hang on. Need to do a bit more. And the fact is that a limited slip diff, Oliver's mentioned ratchet and pull, there is the clutch type, torsion, viscous, there's lots of different ones. Some of them actually lock up both ways, so they lock up under downshifts.
Yeah.
And they also lock up under acceleration, which then alters the dynamic of the car yet again.
Yes, so one locks up on its way into the corner to rotate the car into the corner, and the other one rotates the car on the way out of the corner. So like a 911 wants to rotate more on the way out of a corner, whereas a front engine car will want to rotate more on the way into a corner.
Yeah, so it's a massive subject, and yeah, we don't need a diff.
No.
And not just that, because we get weight transfer to the rear, because the engine is mid-engine, as the back of the car sits down, it actually gains weight. Whereas in an Escort, it gains a little bit of weight, but not much, not in the same amount. You know, you get a vast amount of weight transfer because the engine sat more or less above the wheels or just in front of the wheels. Whereas on an Escort, you've got a solid axle and the engine's in the front, so you get some weight transfer, but not the same as you do in this. And also with the Escort, if you have a bump or a cattle grid and you travel over the cattle grid and the back axle hops, right? So you can use it, also use that to your advantage. So if you go across the cattle grid, like on road rallying, and you've got a corner straight off it, you can use the hop of the axle to actually flick the car in without using a limited slip diff either. So yeah, diffs are good in Escorts. I've had one, I've had numerous, love them. Won't have an Escort without one. Yeah, thumbs up.
So yeah, you get the idea.
But not for this.
But not for this, it just doesn't need it. It's fine.
It's got traction already.
Yeah. It would hurt more than it helps.
I keep slouching. Notice it.
That chair is slouchy.
You just
melt. Pulk Simon says, will you be putting a removable steering wheel? And if you would love to drive this car on rally course-like roads, I've got no choice. It's just that's where I live.
Yeah.
Will this be like a road legal rally car? Right. First thing, removable steering wheel. If I put a removable steering wheel on, I have to get a really expensive one because this car has no play in its steering at all. And so the tiniest little bit will drive me insane. And so it has to be a really expensive one. And so we're going to try and do as much as we can. And that's something that can be added in later.
Yeah.
Okay, will this be like a road legal rally car?
Yes. But it'll be comfortable.
Yes, but not the sort of rally car you're thinking of. Okay, TNMCRU. I wish I had better names. 2153 says, nice work as always. My son and I are living vicariously through your guys, planning a Pikes Peak car. Good luck, chaps. Question. 4 radiator lines, not just ANSS braided lines on the other side of the hard line. Add some adjustment vibration. So basically, we're going to put braided lines on the ends of our hard lines. I think he's asking.
No, there's no need.
No, it's a road car. If it was a competition car, I'd get it. But the fact is, braided lines don't last longer than a silicone line.
No.
They can put up with much higher pressures, but I've replaced dozens of braided lines.
Yeah, because the inside a braided hose is a very, very fine membrane, and it's not like a silicone hose, which you've got some meat to it, for want of a better word. And the silicone hose has lots and lots of flexibility. It can put up with a lot of heat. It can put up with a lot of cold. We've got uprated engine mounts anyway, so the engine, there is some vibration, but the silicone hoses will take that out.
Yeah. The fact is, if we were running super high pressure, so if it were a turbo car and we had a helper pump and we really wanted to shift that coolant through that coolant line, I can imagine doing it then. If it was a racing car, I can imagine doing it then. But the fact is, it's too much overkill, and it would add a little bit of weight and it would add a lot of expense because AN lines are very expensive.
And when was the last time you blew a hose?
On a road car?
On a road car.
On my way back from Gibraltar.
Yeah, but
about 8 years ago.
Yeah, but the car was 30 years old and it had its original hoses.
Yes. 2-stroke carb tuning. I can't read the left rest of your name because YouTube's chopped it off. Says, please tell me something. What's the story with the shoes? Looks like you're going to slip and trip over your shoes a few times each video.
No, clogs.
Right. The slipping and tripping and that is just the way I move. I'm a very big gangly man, and I've never been good on my feet, I'll be honest. I'm very good in a car, I'm good on a bike, I'm good in a boat, right? I'm very good when I'm not on my feet, but I've never been good at football, I've never been good at ball sports or anything. I'm rubbish. I'm terrible at tennis, I've got no hand-eye coordination, but put me in something and I'm superb, right? So the weirdness on my feet is just the way that I am. I'm a very large gangly man.
Right, clogs.
Right.
They are superb in the workshop.
Yes, right. Okay, so here's the thing. You can lay a wooden floor inside your workshop, or you can strap the wooden floor to your foot. Right, there is these shoes, actually these are my winter clogs, and I swap into a different pair of clogs for summer videos because these clogs are too warm.
Yeah, so when you're working on a concrete floor, they're superb. To keep your feet nice and warm, but not too hot. You never get sweaty feet in clogs.
Yep. And you've had problems with your tendons in the past working in steel toe cap boots your entire life.
Yeah, so you're working in safety shoes and steel toe cap boots, and I sillily cut the grass with a push mower, right? And ended up wrecking
wearing your steel toe cap
working
boots.
with steel toe cap boots and wrecked the tendons in my legs.
Yep.
I was like in bits for 3 weeks. So yeah, clogs superb. And the thing is, you can't run around the workshop in them.
Yeah.
Right, you can't act the mick, you can't do anything ridiculous. You've got to think about where you're going. We're not lifting anything, with nothing in here that's going to chop your toes off if you drop it. So they're perfectly safe, they're adequate, and they're super warm and comfy.
And there's another guy who doesn't like pedestrian-friendly bonnets and thinks that cars are just massively over-bloated. A1F man. I actually really like pedestrian-friendly bonnets. One of my favourite things about my 2CV is that it has this big bulgy bonnet and that the engine's massively sunk. So if you ever hit anybody, it's just like squish. The big BMWs and stuff that have these really tall engines and then the engine is right under the bonnet. So if you hit the bonnet, you're just hitting a cast iron block. It's not great. The fact is that some safety stuff is a band-aid for the fact that the car is so heavy, the car is so big. You know, yes, I agree that manual cars are safer. It's a fact. People who drive manual cars pay more attention. This is a fact of like life. A lighter car with better visibility is safer for everybody except you, right? If you crash in a lightweight car, the chances of surviving are not as good as they are in a big SUV, right? However, the life of everyone around you is improved when you drive a smaller, lighter car. And I really think that there's something in our society now where we need to stop just thinking of ourselves and think more of our communities and the people who live around us. And the fact is, if everybody's driving cars that are less destructive, then safety standards in general could relax a little bit because they're not having to test them against giant SUVs and giant, you know, that Tesla Cybertruck and the Hummer. They're not the only ones. The Hummer, that silly Hummer thing that weighs, what is it, £7,000? It's
crazy.
That shouldn't exist. That shouldn't exist as a thing that normal pedestrians
because the thing is,
can buy.
it turns into a £7,000 missile.
Yeah, well, it does 0 to 60 in like 3 point something seconds, which is another thing. I've said this in the past, but I would be all for another license to drive cars over 120 horsepower. I think that all cars should be, like all cars on a standard driving license, should be 120 horsepower or less, and should be 1,200 kilos or less. And to drive anything outside that, you should require a special license, which would then allow your insurance rates to drop because less people will be doing less stupid things. And I do think that as a normal pedestrian car, as a normal car for normal people, nobody needs to do 0 to 60 faster than 10 seconds.
No, definitely not.
That's my opinion, whether you agree with me or not.
As I say, I used to have had a competition license for years. And to renew your license, you've got to go to the doctors. He declares you physically fit. You've got an eye test. And the doctor has to give his judgment on whether you are fit for purpose. Whereas you can be 75-year-old, blind as a bat, get in an electric car that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Around here, there's a lot of old people drive who, quite frankly, shouldn't be driving but have to drive because they have no better option. Around here, you know, it's funny, I watch some American YouTubers who wax lyrical about the fact that in Europe we have such good public transport and stuff. Around here, there are no buses. Like, we don't live
in fact, we live about 6 miles from the nearest bus stop. You'd have to catch a bus to get to the bus stop.
So there are elderly people around here who do drive their cars and they drive around at like 10 miles an hour, like they crawl, don't they? And that's better than them crashing. But the fact is, there is nothing to stop them getting in a Tesla Model 3 that can do 0 to 60 in whatever seconds. It doesn't matter. The thing is, I'm all for freedom of choice and freedom of the people, right? I think companies should be restricted massively in what they can produce and what they can offer to the public. But I think that people should be free to do whatever they want, right? So, within reason. So, as an example, you should have freedom to cycle to work, you should have freedom to take a bus to work, you should have freedom to take a taxi to work, you should have freedom to take a train to work. You should have as many, and freedom to drive to work. You should have as many options as possible to make the best option for you.
Yeah, because some people don't like driving.
Yeah.
And the people that don't like driving and not interested in driving should have an option not to.
Yeah.
And then that frees the roads up for the people that actually do.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there that hate cars, that have to own cars because they have no other option. And I think Jeremy Clarkson once said, I don't like doing heart surgery, so I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because people who have no interest in doing something, who aren't passionate, who aren't considerate when they're doing things, are going to be distracted by the phone.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be distracted by a giant touchscreen, which I don't think should be legal in cars either. I do actually think that legislating what should be done and what shouldn't be done with cars is massively important. And I also think that there shouldn't be a production car on sale today that can't do 100 miles to the gallon. Because let's face it, they all should.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, and that cars, and it's one of those things where, you know, I know that Matt Farrer on his podcast, he says, you know, cars are politics, and it's very true. If every, you know, and a Porsche 911 is adjusted for inflation is actually cheaper than it's ever been, and the reason is that wages around the world, not just America, not just, you know, Europe, whatever, but wages around the world haven't adjusted on the same inflation curve that they had in the 60s. So car companies have to charge less for the cars because people don't make as much money.
Yeah.
So they have to be more penny pinching and more, but they still have to make profit. So they're stuck in this really difficult situation where the car still has to make more profit that they sell every year, but at the same time, the people buying the cars can't pay more for them.
Yeah.
So I believe that everybody should get paid more. I do. No, I do. I believe that everybody should get paid more. Big companies should get taxed appropriately. You know, if a teacher can pay a massive amount of tax, a billionaire can too. Yeah. you know what I mean? We should all be treated fairly. We should all be treated equally, and we should all have as many options as possible to get to work and stuff. And so the people that shouldn't be on the roads don't have to be on the roads. And then we can have cars that are fun, not just sports cars, because not every car has to be a sports car. I love my 2CV, and it is the furthest thing from a sports car that you can possibly get. But it is a riot to drive. And it's a riot to drive at 30 miles an hour. So I don't have to speed because I don't want to speed. You know? So yeah, protective stuff, protective bonnets, and little kids not getting run over. I'm pro. Sorry to take a controversial political statement on my YouTube channel, right? But I'm anti small children getting run over. I know. I'm gonna get cancelled for it. But no, it's true.
No, it's even composites, right? Fiberglass, this stuff is 6 times better at absorbing impact than steel is.
Yeah.
Than the same amount of steel.
Yeah, that's why every car has plastic bumpers now.
So why aren't all cars made in composite and not steel?
Yeah.
If you want to make them safer, make them out of something just as strong, just as light, but more impact absorbing.
I really like the hemp composite, and there's another one that's flax composite in there.
Yeah.
And they are really coming up in the world. I know Porsche, all their competition cars of the last couple of years have all been made of flax composite.
Yeah.
The road cars aren't, because people want to see the carbon fibre, and they want like a nice carbon fibre finish.
Yeah, but that carbon fibre is super polluting.
I think that's a bit Fast and Furious and tarty as well, for
Yeah.
God's sake. The Eco Elise is actually one of my favourite cars ever. Lotus made some Elises called the Eco Elise, where they actually tried to reduce the pollution that was created in creating the cars in the first place, considering that over 50% of a car's pollution of its lifetime is made in its production. That's a really cool concept.
Yep.
Well, I like that. More car companies should take that on board. So yeah, for more controversial political takes as small children not getting run over and the ability for people to have freedom, make sure that you subscribe to this to this YouTube channel. So that's all for this week.
And if you'd like your comment featured in the next video, please leave us a comment below.
Yeah, get typing. And if this video wasn't enough for you, don't worry, there's a whole playlist down there of every single one of these Mosquito videos. And there'll be another video that I'll choose that's one of our favourites.
Yeah.
As well as a button that looks like my face that'll be somewhere on screen that will subscribe you to this channel. Speaking of subscribing, if you want to support this channel, we don't have a Patreon or anything. So the most important thing that you can do to help this channel is share these videos with your friends. Don't forget to click like and yeah, just be awesome and be an amazing member of our
watch them to the end.
Community. Yes, watch them all to the end. So thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.